Good evening. It's so nice to see all of you. Thank you for coming. It's so nice to be here face to face in conversation. It's the art of human connection that brings us here so people can share a little bit about themselves and share a part of their journey, and that is why we have Scripps Presents, because we want to offer something meaningful and fun and thought-provoking, regardless of the day you're having, especially with this weather. And that's the nice thing about being in person. It's like we can have this connection, like if you're having a good day or a bad day. And our intention here is to elevate your day. And, didn't they introduce me? I'm Jackie Yudgar. I'm Assistant Director of Public Events. Thank you. Thank you. I want to talk about Jessica for one sec before we get started. And you are a prolific writer, Jessica. There's achieving success, and then there's doing something with it. And we're going to get to that. And in case you're wondering what it's like to be friends with Jessica, she is tremendously capable, and it's the equivalent of riding shotgun with a Formula One driver.
That's very kind.
Yeah.
And dangerous. It sounds kind and dangerous.
Bring It On is going to be 25 next year, so thank you for making Scripps Presents your first stop in this big celebratory year you're about to embark on. And I'll pass it on to Kavya to start with the Q&A.
Yeah, so we know you as such an amazing writer, director. So I was just kind of wondering.
But do you though?
Well, hopefully after
like
this,
a levity. Do you really know me?
after this, hopefully we'll get to know you a little more. But I was just wondering kind of what got you into this field, what got you interested in it? Was there a little moment in your life or what inspired it?
Yeah, I was like many of us who come from, parents who aspired to be together and did not succeed in that aspiration. I was trying to figure out the world. I was an only child of divorced parents. They did their best. And I ended up being like a +1 as an only child, kind of bopping around from place to place. And when you are the only one, you're trying to figure out the context. So I was a kid trying to figure out context everywhere I went. Who is that? Who is that? Who is that? What do they do? What are they? That was my job, was to try and figure out context. And that skill, it turned out, was very useful. And it led me to be somebody who considered people, considered the places they were in, considered the events of their lives, and the context of that quite deeply. I just was always wondering, why are they that way? Why is Uncle so-and-so like that? Why is she like that? And rather than just judge them, to really try and say, hey, but like, what if I was walking a mile in their shoes? What would that be like? And so it kind of felt like, writing to me felt like the opportunity to be a fly on the wall of anybody's life, rather than just my own life, where I felt kind of like a +1 nobody wanted. As a kid, it was like, oh, I get it, I was a mistake. So let me earn my place and figure this out, and try and have fun along the way, and like make sure everybody has a good time. And that led to writing and wanting to be an entertainer and entertain people with stories. But more important than that, I think try to connect. For those of us who felt like underdogs or felt like outsiders, I know Bring It On seems like a very weird movie for an outsider, but if you can think about a time in your life where you felt uninvited and excluded as a kid, and then you go to a game as a little girl and you see these young women who are commanding the attention, they're commanding the floor, they're absolutely commanding the attention of everybody in the room. That was oddly revolutionary for me, as weird as that sounds, back in the 70s when I first saw like high school cheerleaders for the first time. I couldn't imagine a world where young women could get the attention of the adults. So that was how gymnastics, it started with gymnastics and then cheerleading, and I was like, but what are the people like behind this? What are they going through? And that kind of was my entree into writing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's really important to be able to share the stories of people whose stories might not be as amplified, And so as a writer,
I think Bring It On, I think it, look, it's 25 years old, it's definitely dated. Some things have held up really well, other things not so much. But it seems like a movie about, the most popular girl, but it's not. I think that's why people kind of gravitate towards it a little bit. It really is about underdogs in this space that feels more privileged, that is privileged and not privileged. So it has contemporary themes. Even after all these years, they kind of held up, which is nice.
At Columbia, I know you interned for Spin magazine and had the opportunity to
Is it still around? Is Spin still around? Does Spin's magazine
so.
still exist? I don't even know. It was
Maybe
like Rolling
digital.
Stone for indie. It doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
Like most magazines don't exist. It was like indie music.
I hope, have you guys heard of Spin magazine? Okay, cool. And you had the opportunity to do some amazing interviews in the music industry, and you've also helped write some amazing films. What are the most important things you've learned about storytelling from your experience writing and interviewing? And I can answer it for you too.
No. I think great movies occupy this emotional real estate in our hearts and minds. I think there's, storytelling is a chance to use empathy and to build a bridge between the audience and somebody else's experience or an experience that's similar to yours. And so interviewing is like task number one. You've got to be able to interrogate your characters a bit. You've got to be able to interrogate who they are, why they are the way they are. And so interviewing gave me good chops, I think.
Like the layers of scrutiny, if you will.
Yeah, peeling back the layers of the onion, just trying to understand people. It's kind of a bit of a CSI. Like, you might have an idea about a character, but then you have to know why they are the way they are. And so you get to, it's a little bit of Frankenstein, a little bit of invention, a little bit of imagination. It's a cocktail.
And as you transition from, interviewing to writing, I know there are a lot of students in this room, some of who are interested in going to film, or just like, we have to write as college students in general, narratives, personal stories, essays. So what advice do you have for the writing process? What's your approach to this? And, how would you, advise students who are writing?
Well, storytelling is a superpower. And it's a very useful superpower in life because your ability to convey your feelings, emotions, opinions, or interrogate your own feelings, emotions, and opinions, interrogate the feelings, emotions, and opinions of others, or trying to understand them. Storytelling is a superpower to help weave that, right? I think right now in the angertainment complex we seem to be living in of a lot of outrage and a lot of intolerance, storytelling helps me try to understand and try to find acceptance and make peace with rather than fight with everything going on in the world. So storytelling just helps me to, it's a superpower for everybody. In terms of what you asked about leading to your future, I want to suggest this. What you care about matters, and when you tell stories that are for kind of everyone, they end up for no one. But it's by focusing on the niche things that you really care about and that are precious to you and taking that risk of vulnerability that somebody else might find it interesting. That's what I think great stories are made of. It's taking the risk of sharing something that's vulnerable. Not everybody loved cheerleading. Believe me, I pitched Bring It On 28 times. I had 27 no's. Did I say it's a movie about socioeconomic inequality and cheerleading skirts? No, I did not. I said it was Strictly Ballroom meets Clueless set in the world of the National High School Cheerleading Championships. I hid the medicine in the candy, and some young women were asking me about that earlier. When you have a message, how do you deal with that? How do you balance the storytelling and the messaging? And I would say very carefully and very thoughtfully, you want to lure people in, and then they're having a good time, and then, oh my God, I've never thought about that. I've never thought about it that way before. So it is a balancing act, and you're juggling hopefully a lot of different things in your storytelling, but you want to ultimately, I think, shine a light on what you care about and try and see if other people might not be inclined to care as well.
Nice. Bring It On was released in 2000, as we were saying, and it still has such a large cultural impact and relevance in its message. So when you wrote the film, what did you hope people would learn? And what's it like knowing the impact of the film today, especially on TikTok with like the Halloween costumes, and it lives on?
It's a wonderful feeling. I think, I sold it in 1996. So I did 28 pitches between September, so 2 months of pitches in a car with no air conditioning, driving around Los Angeles in August. I had to bring a change of clothes to every pitch because I was so drenched in sweat after driving in my non-air conditioned vehicle to the pitch. I'd have to go into the bathroom, change my outfit, which was drenched, and then go pitch the movie as if I was just like happy-go-lucky and everything's great. So there was a lot of sweat, blood, and tears that went into selling Bring It On. And by the way, the other thing that I learned, and this is an interesting thing about storytelling, if you're telling an anecdote or kind of workshopping an anecdote with your friends, family, in school, every time I did those meetings, even though they were saying no reluctantly. They liked the idea, or they'd give me a little bit of feedback, and I would take that feedback and incorporate it into the next time, and the next and the next. And so that was really helpful to me. But another thing I wish somebody had told me is, you are walking into rooms of men who do not understand young women, they do not care about young women as audiences, and there's a really gross asymmetry that you're gonna be experiencing. And I wish somebody had pulled me aside and said, hey, the asymmetry is against you here. It's probably best I did not know that. Ignorance is bliss. But, there are, I believed in the story, and I knew I wanted to see the movie, and sometimes it's just about the thing you want to see and solving your own problem, and in doing that, you're entertaining other people in the process. But yeah, it's weird out there. It's weird out there selling your creative wares. There's no two ways about it. It's just a very strange place to be in, and learning to get comfortable with that is very unnatural. It's very unnatural to say, like, hey, I'm going to tell you this idea I've worked on for a really long time. I'm going to act like it doesn't bother me when you say no. It's just very fake and false, But there I was, going in again and again and again, and then do that 28 times. How I did it, there was no plan B, is really the truth. So sometimes no plan B is the best plan you can have. In my case, it worked out. But I don't want to pretend or have any pretense here that it was like easy breezy cover girl. It was not. It was hard won. And even then after you sell it, you think, okay, and now there's more to do. It's not, you don't sell it and then it's all done. You sell it and then you've got to litigate with the studio. You've got to litigate with the producers. You've got to fight for the story you believe in. I mean, one of the male producers on the movie, who shall remain nameless, wanted to cut the opening cheer. And I said to him, you are going to alienate everybody in the audience. You have to let everybody in the audience know. And for those who don't know the opening cheer of Bring It On, they say, I'm sexy, I'm cute, I'm popular to boot. And it's a dream sequence. And the cuteness of that moment is, she has anxiety. This is a cheerleader who's having anxiety. And in that anxiety dream, it kind of breaks the mold of the perfect cheerleader and lets you have a vulnerable moment with the lead. That's also funny. And so I had to literally, I felt like beg to include this thing that felt so necessary and so inherent, and is now iconic, and people quote it all over the place, but at the time, one person wanted it gone, and he had a lot more power than I did. So imagine, what are you gonna do in that situation? It was very life-altering. And you're alienating people, you're fighting for what you believe in, you're fighting against somebody with more power in the equation than you do. It's very weird. But there you have it, that happened. And now I'm sure he would say, you were right, I was wrong, whatever.
At least you're tall, though. You can go head to eye with these guys, right?
Yeah, he was tall. He was tall too.
I was going to ask you about this later on, but since you mentioned kind of the asymmetry when you walk into rooms and, especially with some parts of the industry being very male-dominated, what was your experience like as a woman? I mean, you mentioned, some of your ideas being kind of shut down or you having to fight harder for them.
Yeah, it's not their lived experience, right? So if you're going into a room with men who all know each other and all watch the same stuff, you are the outsider, you just are. And I really struggled with that. And my solution in the short term and midterm was to come in with numbers, which people don't like in Hollywood, believe it or not. You'd think they care about audiences and trends, they kind of don't. So I just went in with numbers and I said, this many millions of people do this activity, this many millions of people watch it. When I was selling Stick It, I said, Olympic gymnastics beats the Super Bowl. in its numbers every 4 years. I think that's pretty high demand. And it turns out I was right. But if they don't watch gymnastics, they think you're making it up. So sometimes it's good to just have the data and the analytics in your back pocket, that's how I learned to navigate that.
Yeah, numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie, but people don't always like hearing the numbers. And numbers can also be manipulated, as we know. Data can be manipulated. But if you go in with enough numbers, it becomes an overwhelming, they can't really argue with you.
Isn't the cheerleading competition on ESPN the most watched?
Well, it was like Ocho. There were so many ESPN channels, but ESPN cheerleading did really well, and it was it wasn't easy to get the numbers on it, because oddly, fun fact about those cheerleading competitions, those were paid for like infomercials. That wasn't ESPN programming. That was programming that Varsity Spirit Corp bought, really brilliant, by the way, and Varsity Spirit Corp, in another diabolical act of just monopoly, they own the camps, the cheerleading competitions, and the uniforms. It's a complete monopoly. So they knew that business was good, and I was able to get some numbers from them, which I would use in meetings. But no, I knew there was a market there. Hollywood did not.
I mean, I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about cheerleading before I saw Bring It On, and I wasn't even sure if I was gonna like the movie, but I decided I was gonna lie to you and be like, oh yeah, I loved it, but I did love it. It was
one of my friends
yeah.
did not like it, and he called me and told me, which was, well, he's forever has a place in my heart for telling me his real feelings.
Do you have any advice for young people wanting to enter Hollywood in any capacity?
Don't do it. No.
Thank you,
How
everybody.
do you feel
Good
about
night.
the Titanic? I know. I would say that I think there are lots of skills of storytelling. If you want to be a storyteller, be a storyteller and figure it out. Figure out a way to tell your stories. There are lots of ways to do that now that didn't exist in the early aughts. For example, iPhones did not exist till 2007. YouTube did not exist. Social did not exist at the scale it does now. TikTok did not exist. I mean, the tools on TikTok are incredible. If you want to tell stories, there are tons of free tools. I would be encouraging people to practice with the free tools available and become undeniable. If you create something that's viral, Hollywood will come knocking. It's hard when you don't have that yet to get into this shrinking market. But that said, the tools have never been cheaper. The access has never been more possible. So if you must do it, do it.
Sure. YouTube.
Don't go to Hollywood. Just make the stuff you want to make. There's a lot of independent stuff. If it's good, people will buy it. It'll rise to the top. Make something good. It's easier said than done. But if you want to make stories, that's the shortcut. Don't go to Hollywood. Just do it yourself.
You only have, so many hours in a day, so much energy to tell these stories, make all these projects. So how do you choose what projects you want to take on and what stories you want to tell?
That is a great question, and I do have a system. And so I learned early on, just because I like something doesn't mean that audiences necessarily want to do that. So I do something called proof of audience. And I research to make sure there has to be some demand, but kind of like ratiometrics in Moneyball. There's a very obscure reference for anybody that saw Moneyball. You want to make sure there's a hunger and a low inventory, right? So I want to make sure there's demand and lots of audience for it, but there isn't a lot around, like gymnastics movie. Gymnastics is spiking in the ratings once every 4 years. That means hunger, and in between those 4 years, there's not a lot of inventory. So that's a very technical way so I'll think about something, I'll look for it in the culture, I'll do some SEO, scanning, I'll look in my feed. Like right now, I'm very into UAPs and UFOs and disclosure. And so I've been tracking that since about 2019. That's a really interesting topic. And a lot of people are interested in that topic. So that, again, will it be crowded? Will there be too many people trying to sell projects like that? Perhaps, but I'm going to try. So the idea is, what can I say or offer in that space that's different from what's currently out there, and then how can I do it in a way that it'll have that special sauce, a little bit of a twist.
Nice.
Don't you want to know if aliens exist? Am I alone?
Okay, so you also directed the film Stick It in 2006. We have a clip for Stick It.
Every day, I break the law of gravity. And sometimes, other laws get broken in the process.
Let's get out of here!
If I was lucky, I would have gotten sentenced to juvie. Instead, I got sent back to the world I thought I'd escaped forever. Welcome to the Vickerman Gymnastics Academy.
What is she doing here?
Why all the hate? But when you walk out on finals and lose Team USA some team gold, it's not personal, it's national.
Haley Graham has come out of retirement to train with us.
You've really gotten skinny? Fat?
Oh, goody.
Jealous, Haley?
Can you tell Joanne that I'm gonna do a real dismount?
Haley's gonna do a real dismount.
Put down the phone.
Haley!
Now we work one way around here. That's my way. Or we can call the judge. You decide.
Way to build trust.
I couldn't resist.
Can you imagine making it all the way to finals and walking out? It's totally insane.
That was for finals.
Are you kidding me? It's not called gymnastics.
The IG Classic, it's coming up in a couple of weeks. This could be your last chance to turn your life around.
If you think that I'm getting on this competition floor with some stupid cookie-cutter routine, you are seriously senile.
You gonna hurt yourself?
Probably.
Just don't get blood on the equipment.
Okay, guys, let it rip. If you're gonna eat Matt, you eat Matt hard.
Come on, get in the truck.
You no voice?
I'm so shaking things.
Call me.
Stalk you. Dude, how do we not know about this sport?
Stick it. I think you should get back on the tramp again. I mean, just to make sure you still suck.
Oh my God. It's not called gymnastics.
Memories.
What was it like navigating the writing process and also making sure your vision came to fruition on the directing side?
Well, writing and directing is very different. Like writing, I wanted to direct out of self-defense because you've written enough movies and you feel like, well, I can ruin it just as easily. Somebody else can ruin it. So, Stick It, I wrote to direct. I love gymnastics, and I wanted it to be in a lane that was close enough to bring it on that I would be given the money and the resources to do it. So yeah, it was, look, you're managing an asset. It's kind of like running a startup. You're managing a $28 million business and you're doing it in 18 months and you have to come in on time and under budget and then you have to deliver at the box office. So you're trying to control a lot of variables with a very big team for a short, compressed period of time. So it was really exciting. It was really exhausting. It's really, shooting for 52 days straight, even with a big crew and resources, is exhausting. And it's a good thing. Again, ignorance is bliss. You've never done it before. You just barrel through.
Like 12-hour days, 14-hour days.
12-hour days, yeah. Yeah, there are union rules that help. Because the crew has to turn around and stuff, but
Yeah.
no, it was great. It was an incredible experience. The crew was amazing. The cast was incredible. I learned a lot, but we were on a breakneck pace for movies. Movies are generally considered like country club, big budget movies. You have a lot of resources and a lot of runway. We didn't have either. And then it did really well. It was #1 per screen average opening weekend, and then it was #1 for 7 straight weeks in a row on iTunes, which was insane. But again, Hollywood was looking at other things. They're looking at tentpole movies, Marvel movies. So this kind of movie doing really well in a category was challenging for me. I didn't feel like I saw my colleagues who were making unsuccessful movies. I was like, wait, what? The male executives couldn't necessarily relate. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that was my experience.
We're just saying.
Yeah, we're just saying.
Missy
FYI.
Peregrine also was unknown, so that was another risk to give the lead of a big
She was in
budget
a small
film.
show on
She went
ABC.
unknown.
Yeah, she was on. I had great casting. Kellen Lutz, as you may recognize.
yeah, he's
Missy. Yeah. Jeff already had a career. I can't take that one.
He was pretty well known, I think.
He
Jeff
was
Bridges.
very well known.
Okay.
That was incredible. I got to, in order to work with Jeff, there's a process you have to go through. And first you have to prove you have the money to work with Jeff. And then once we proved we had the money, I had to send him a letter. And I had seen him on one of those actor studio shows. And he was just very unusual. He was such an unusual person. And I thought, I'm going to write him a script of how I feel asking him to be in this movie.
Hilarious.
And so I wrote him a script describing how nervous I was, and I was like talking to the bugs on the wall in my house and like basically losing my mind with nerves to get Jeff Bridges to do it. And he loved it. He was like, oh my God, that was so adorable. So then I got the letter in, and then I had passed the phone call. I had to do a phone test. I passed that. And then I had to drive to Santa Barbara and sit down with him.
This is like dating.
Well, it is. Look, if somebody's going to give you, if Jeff Bridges, who's a Ferrari, is going to say, I'm going to drive this Ferrari into your garage, they want to make sure you're not cuckoo.
Fair point. Phone call, meet in person.
And this is the funnest fact. I was a huge fan of the Supremes as a kid, and I had the greatest hits, and I listened to the Supremes. I don't know why. It's a very weird thing for a kid.
Diana
but I
Ross?
loved.
Okay.
So I drive to Santa Barbara, I meet Jeff at the Biltmore Hotel, and who is in the lobby as I'm walking in but Diana Ross, and I go like, I was like, this is gonna happen. The good luck charm of my childhood is standing in front of me. And I think I behaved very bizarrely because I couldn't believe what was happening. Like,
She lives in Malibu and never goes out.
She was in
basically.
Santa Barbara. And she goes, Jeff, and then she goes, Jeff, and I'm thinking, Jess. I knew that wasn't what's happening. I'm like, she's saying my name. And he goes over, and he doesn't really want to talk to her. He's kind of blowing her off, and I'm like, wait, it's Diana Ross, my childhood supreme. So that was a little behind the scenes of it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was
That's
destiny.
a great story.
Thank you. Thought you might enjoy it.